Hello dear friends. How is going your Christmas? I hope all are enjoying the Christmas. Stay tuned with me to the end. Let me start the family talk stories. My daughter leave us because my husband is attracted to her. At 55, life had finally started to feel stable for me. After a tumultuous first marriage, I found love again and remarried a man I believed could bring peace and stability to my life. My husband, now 63, seemed like a rock, someone I could rely on after years of hardship. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. My relationship with my 23-year-old daughter had always been complicated. She was diagnosed with dissociative personality disorder and carried a lot of uncertain trauma from her childhood. Watching my first marriage drop separated took an overwhelming toll on her. To create things more regrettable, she confronted persistent bullying in school, something I fizzled to address satisfactorily. When she came to me, mournfully sharing the pitilessness she persevered, I was solidified by my conviction that children are guiltless. I didn't need to heighten the circumstance by including grown-ups, so I gave her an exhortation I thought was common sense at the time. Take a shower, clean up, and display yourself with certainty. Looking back, I realize how much that reaction harmed her. She needed assurance and approval, not an arrangement that felt pretentious of her torment. In spite of the fact that the bullying inevitably finished, the scars waited. She still reminds me of the time a school volunteer told her, "In the event that you were my kid, I'd grant you consent to battle back." It stings to know I let her down in minutes when she required me most. When she moved in with my moment spouse and me to wrap up school and get her life on track, I thought it was a chance to patch our broken relationship. I trusted that appearing her a solid, cherishing marriage would recuperate a few of her wounds. But it didn't take long for pressures to surface. My daughter is contemplative and imaginative, frequently losing herself in books and craftsmanship. She favored eating suppers alone, savoring minutes of peace. My spouse, on the other hand, is agreeable and active. He'd regularly sit with her whereas she ate, attempting to make discussion. To my astonish, she found this meddling in chafing. To begin with, I chalked it up to identity contrasts. But at that point things took a darker turn. My girl begun complaining that my husband's look waited on her for as well long, making her feel awkward. She has gone up against him, and the house ejected in yelling matches and pummeled entryways. I attempted to intercede, but my world disintegrated when my spouse confessed the incomprehensible. He was pulled into her. He depicted her as walking temptation and conceded it was why he had been removed from me. His words were a blade to my heart. I didn't blame on my girl. None of this was her blame. But the circumstance got to be agonizing. They discuss within the house felt choking, and I couldn't think clearly with both of them beneath the same roof. I required space to handle this obliterating disclosure, so I made the troublesome choice to inquire my girl to take off. I gave her cash to remain at an extended stay in and encouraged her to utilize her college's crisis lodging assets. She raged out, incensed and harmed, and turned to her father, my ex-husband, for back. Presently, he's portrayed me as a reprobate over social media, denouncing me of abandoning our girl in her time of require. I feel like I'm suffocating. I love my girl, and I'm not abandoning her. Our budgetary circumstance is dire, my spouse and I are profound in obligation, and my ex is unemployed. I thought I was doing the leading I may beneath the circumstances, but presently I'm addressing everything. My marriage is hanging by a string, and I do not know on the off chance that it's worth sparing. I'm cleared out hooking with incomprehensible questions. How do you ensure your child whereas protecting your claim rational soundness? How do you revamp believe in a marriage after such a selling out? And most critically, how do you repair a relationship with a daughter who feels like you've fizzled her time and time once more? This isn't fair a story approximately family, it's almost the chaotic, agonizing choices we got to make when cherish and devotion collide. Story 2, Not getting my ex's affair child a Christmas gift. I'm a 34-year-old mom with primary custody of my 3 kids, 11M, 9F, 9M. My ex-husband cheated on me years ago, and as a result of the affair, he fathered a child who is now 4 years old. He has full custody of her because the child's mother is not in the picture and isn't paying child support. My relationship with this child is non-existent, and I've made no effort to foster one. My kids don't see her as their sibling, and I have never encouraged them to. I have cleared out it totally up to them to choose how they feel almost her. They do not appear especially interested, and in all honesty, I'm impassive almost whether they create a bond with her. My ex is not a truant father, but he's distant from reliable. He works long hours, lives nearly 2 hours absent, and has our kids each other end of the week. After the separate and the issue, his relationship with the kids has been strained. He's not totally uninvolved, but his restricted nearness implies our kids do not have the most grounded association with him, or with his girl. Since losing his work in January, his monetary circumstance has compounded. He got a modern work, but his salary is much lower, and the courts diminished his child back installments. The kids have taken note the stark differentiate in their quality of life when they're with him versus when they're with me. He cautioned them months back that Christmas blessings would be negligible this year. My ex as of late brought up his concerns approximately Christmas for his girl. She doesn't have any amplified family on either side, and he can't manage to get her much. He inquired to me through our co-parenting app on the off chance that I might purchase her something, just a little blessing so she'd have more to open. I said no. He brought it up once more when we met with our twins instructor, and I stood my ground. He knows I do not have a relationship with his girl, which I do not feel any commitment toward her. This end of the week, he dropped the kids off after his visit. He saw the heap of blessings beneath the tree at my house and inquired once more on the off chance that I'd gotten his girl anything. I told him no. He got to be obviously disturbed and pulled out a cheap doll from a dollar store, saying it was all he may bear. He denounced me of being brutal and childish, claiming that I may have at slightest made a difference. My kids see her as their sister, so they might need to incorporate her. Not only that, but he said his girl as of now feels surrendered by her mother and her mother's family, and presently feels undesirable by her kin and their mother as well. He said I was rebuffing a guiltless child for his botches and cleared out irate. Why I said no. I am not denying that his girl is innocent in all this. She didn't inquire to be born into this circumstance. But at the same time, she's not my obligation. My need is my kids, making beyond any doubt they have a great Christmas, keeping up our family, and taking care of them sincerely and fiscally. I do not need to obscure the lines of duty here. My ex made this circumstance, and whereas I sympathize with the battles his girl faces, it's his work to figure out how to supply for her, not mine. It's moreover worth noticing that I do not think buying her a blessing would mystically unravel anything. My kids do not see her as a sister, and whereas I've cleared out that choice up to them, I do not think a single display would alter their sentiments almost her or make a bond where none as of now exists. My ex's contention that I'm rebuffing his girl doesn't sit well with me. I'm not withholding something that's legitimately hers, I'm fair, not venturing in to settle an issue I didn't make. He's dependable for her joy and well-being, not me. That said, his words approximately her surrender hit a nerve. I know she's in an intense circumstance, and it's not reasonable to her. But where does my duty conclusion? On the off chance that I were to step in presently, where would it halt? I do not imagine being idealized. This circumstance is untidy, and there are no simple answers. Portion of me ponders in case I ought to have fair gotten her something small, a coloring book or a stuffed animal, just to maintain a strategic distance from this strife. But at that point I think approximately the point of reference it might set, and I ponder in case I'm right to stand firm. I get it that my ex is in a troublesome position, but he made choices that driven to this. I've worked difficult to construct a steady life for my kids, and I do not think it's reasonable to anticipate me to require on obligations that do not have a place to me. Story 3, telling my stepdaughter if she dislikes being here, she's free to go to her mother. I 34-year-old am hitched to my spouse was 41-year-old, and we have 2 youthful children together 5-year-old and 2-year-old. My spouse incorporates a 21-year-old girl, Molly, from his past marriage. Molly thinks about overseas and comes domestic amid Easter, Christmas, and summer breaks, part her time between our house and her mother's. Molly has continuously appeared entitled. My mother-in-law faults her mother, saying she ruined Molly and didn't educate her conduct. I remain out of that discussion since it's not my commerce. Molly came back for the Christmas break recently and went through the day at her mother's house. Nowadays, she came to our house and joined us for lunch. Amid the dinner, she quickly inquired her father, "What car am I driving whereas I'm here?" My husband clarified that his car was still within the shop, so he couldn't loan it to her. She at that point turned to me and pointed out that we have 2 cars in our yard, saying, "Cool, you'll be able to provide me one of those." I calmly told her 2 things. 1, on the off chance that she needs something, she ought to inquire considerately, not request it, since she isn't entitled to anything. 2, I wouldn't be giving her either of my cars. One may be a work vehicle given by my manager, and the other is saved for family trips to visit relatives over the occasions. This disturbed her, but the discussion didn't halt there. She at that point reported she needed to have a modern year's party at our house. I told her completely not, since we as of now have plans and, with 2 youthful kids, it's not attainable to have a party. At this point, she got irate and begun hollering, blaming us of treating her ineffectively. She said it didn't feel like she was her father's girl, which we suck. That's when I told her that in case she dislikes being here so much, she's free to go remain with her mother and be a brat there. My spouse is upset with Molly for her behavior and underpins me. My mother-in-law too underpins me and says I do not have to be endured disregard in my possessed domestic. Molly's mother, be that as it may, called me to say I shouldn't have talked to her girl like that. I told her that she seemed to handle her grown-up daughter's tantrums herself, and proposed she instructs Molly how to act deferentially. On one hand, I don't feel I ought to endure disrespect in my domestic, particularly before my youthful children. Molly is 21, a long time ancient, and ought to know how to act like a grown-up. On the other hand, I ponder in the event that I might have taken care of things in an unexpected way. Story 4, taking a break from my BF after he refused to spend Christmas with me. I am 25-year-old and my boyfriend was 26-year-old, and I have been together for over a decade. Despite being in a committed relationship for so long, we're not married yet. In many ways, he's the love of my life, my best friend, and my soulmate. But lately, I've been questioning whether our dynamic is truly sustainable. The situation came to a head recently when he refused to spend Christmas with me, preferring to stay with his family instead. It's left me feeling hurt, confused, and wondering if I'm being unreasonable or if this relationship needs a reset. One of the things I've continuously appreciated about my boyfriend is his unflinching devotion to his family. Coming from a conventional Asian foundation, family values are profoundly imbued in both of us. He's continuously been a family fellow, something I found charming when we to begin with begun dating. But as the long time have gone by, I've realized that his family's needs nearly continuously come sometime recently mine. To begin with, I rationalized it as a portion of his childhood. After all, one of his guardians battles with extreme uneasiness and requires consistent care and consideration. He's continuously been there for them, and I've attempted to bolster him in that part. Our relationship hit an unused level of complexity when we entered a long-distance relationship, LDR, a long time prior. In spite of the distance, I've done everything I can to preserve our association. I've traveled to see him at whatever point conceivable, arranged shocks for his birthdays, and indeed made an exertion to reinforce my relationship with his family. Over the long time, I've organized endless celebrations for his guardians and kin, trusting to be seen as an important portion of his world. However, I've once in a while gotten the same kind of keenness in return. In reality, I can't review a single birthday or commemoration shock he's arranged for me. This year, I'd trusted things may well be diverse. Christmas has never been a critical occasion for either of our families, as we're not Christians. Be that as it may, since I had a day off, I thought it would be the idealized opportunity for us to spend a few quality times together. For the primary time, I inquired him to come to my city for Christmas. It wasn't an enormous ask, just one day, not indeed in used Year's Eve. His family wasn't planning any extraordinary trips this year, so I thought he may well be open to the thought. Instead, he denied through and through. He said he'd come the day before Christmas but needed to return to domestic to celebrate with his family. His reply felt like a punch to the intestine. Was I truly inquiring for as well much? I've continuously caught on his commitments to his family, but I couldn't offer assistance but feel that this was another occasion of me being pushed to the side. Over the past decade, I've made so numerous penances for this relationship. Fair as of late, I took a lower-paying work to move closer to him, cutting our 900-kilometer remove to fair an hour's drive. I've attempted to be his secure space, a consistent source of bolster, and an accomplice who never includes to his burdens. However, I'm beginning to feel like I'm the as it were one making compromises. It's not that he doesn't care. He does make an exertion in little ways. He's continuously accessible for late-night calls, guarantees we talk each day, and makes time for me when I visit him. But when it comes to going over and beyond, the kind of motions that make somebody feel really cherished, he's reliably fallen brief. It's not around fabric things or fantastic shocks, it's approximately feeling prioritized. As Christmas drawn closer, I found myself developing angry. I cancelled my plans to see him inside and out, incapable to bear the thought of another visit where I'd come moment to his family. For once, I needed him to select me, to create me feel like I mattered fair as much. I have begun to address whether I'd made myself as well accessible, as well pleasing. Had my steady giving made him take me for a loud? I've communicated my sentiments to him numerous times sometime recently, clarifying that my adore dialect is quality time and words of affection. He's tuned in, guaranteed to undertake, but the changes have been brief. This time, I'm pondering if a more extreme step is required. For the primary time in our relationship, I'm genuinely mulling over a break. It's not a choice I take softly. The thought of investing indeed a week separated feels terrible, but I'm starting to see it as a vital step to recapture clarity. A break might deliver both of us the space to reflect on what we need and require from this relationship. In the days leading up to Christmas, I avoided bringing up the topic again. I wanted to see if he'd change his mind, if he'd surprise me with a gesture that showed he'd been listening. On Christmas Eve, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed. It was a message from him, "Check your door." Confused, I walked over and opened the door to find him standing there, holding a small bag and looking sheepish. "I couldn't let you spend Christmas alone," he said. My heart raced. For a moment, it felt like everything I'd been longing for was finally happening. But as we sat down to talk, it got to be clear that this wasn't the terrific turning point I'd trusted for. He'd as it were come for some hours sometime recently heading back to his family. "I'll remain until morning," he said, as in case that was gathered to form it all superior. That night, as he rested on the lounge chair, I lay wakeful considering around our relationship. His visit, whereas sweet, felt more like a band-aid than an arrangement. I realized that the issue wasn't almost Christmas or any single occasion. It was approximately a pattern of me giving him taking, of my needs reliably coming moment to his. Within the morning, I told him I required some space. "I adore you," I said, "but I can't keep feeling like I'm the as it were one battling for us. I got to know that you're willing to meet me halfway." He looked staggered, but he gestured. "I understand," he said discreetly. "Take the time you need. It's been a week since that discussion, and I'm still figuring out what this break implies for us. I've begun centering on myself, spending time with companions, investigating leisure activities I dismissed, and rediscovering what makes me cheerful exterior of this relationship. It hasn't been simple, but it's been vital. As for him, he's been coming to our more thoughtfully. He's sent me messages recognizing his deficiencies and communicating an honest-to-goodness crave to progress. Whether those words will translate into activities remains to be seen. I still love him deeply, and I hope this break will lead to a stronger, more balanced relationship. But for the first time in years, I'm prioritizing myself. Because love shouldn't mean losing yourself. It should mean growing together, with both partners feeling valued and cherished. So, as I sit here reflecting on everything, I've come to one clear realization: if we're going to make this work, it has to be a partnership, not a one-sided effort. And if he can't meet me there, then maybe it's time for me to let go. Thank you for watching and listening the story. Good night. All have a great sleep. We meet on the next Family Tales and Truths. Don't forget to subscribe.